Oh, shalom, my friends. Shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And oh, what a delight. I have talked to you since the beginning when I was on this program about my love for the music of Reb Shlomo Carlebach. He was a folk singer as well as a rabbi. And he would play at places like the Village Gate and downtown in the village. So he straddled two worlds, which can be very painful. But he did it beautifully, and his music lasts even though he passed many years ago. So who knew? Who would ever figure that they would make a musical about his life? Not a musical, okay, went play off Broadway. Then it went to Broadway for a while, and then went back to off Broadway. And who would even ever think beyond this that there would be a movie? And they made a movie of Soul Doctor, the life of Shlomo Carlebach, and also how it intersected with the great Nina Simone, who is not Jewish, but we like her anyway. So here's the deal. Soul Doctor, which is written and directed by the guy next to me right here. Here it is. You're going to get a special chance to see it this Tuesday, June 13th, playing at a theater near you. If you happen to be, I'm in Maryland at the moment. You can see in Towson or Owings Mills or Columbia. Is at the Westbury Theater on Long Island. There's one in Denver and Fort Collins. If you're in Colorado, all over the country, chances to see Soul Doctor, the movie by this man, Daniel Wise. We are with a wise guy, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom, Daniel. How you doing?
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem. A good Erev Shabbos.
A good Shabbos to you too. And then you look well. Are you having a? I saw what you were drinking there in that glass. You had orange juice before.
L'chaim, 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 l'chaim.
Yeah, that isn't all orange juice. Let me tell you. And here's my mug. So you.
Oy all day.
L'chaim to you too.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
This is, the wine sauce that they put herring in. This is what I'm drinking right now. So let me, first of all, say a mazel tov to you.
They put some orange juice in my vodka. Who did that? Who spiked my vodka?
Is that terrible? Maybe it's a mistake because I want you to go back to wine. Let me ask you, you are actually not just a writer, not just a director, but you are an ordained rabbi. I'm a disdained rabbi, but you're actually an ordained rabbi. Is that true?
Well, I don't know what, I think ordination is kind of like a Catholic idea that you have certain powers vested in you. I have a smicha, so when I received the smicha, I realized from Rabbi Hirschsprung and some other great rabbis in Montreal, and smicha means that he relies on me, so it's the previous generation saying, I'm relying on you. Smicha means to lean and to rely on. So it's a previous generation saying, "Listen, I've studied with you, I've mentored you, now I've tested you, and I can rely on you to take on the spiritual needs and community needs of the next generation." So I'm trying to make good on his trust in me, but it's not an ordination that makes me a different person than anyone else or some kind of spiritual powers. That I've received from my new faith.
Which is?
Oh, I've become a very devout pastafarian, and
yeah, we're talking. That is an actual thing, by the way. It's a group of people who eat a ton of pasta and believe in. Are you from the sect that believes in whole wheat, or are you from the Semolina group?
Oh well, first of all, I've become the pasta rebbe, and we have the pasta chassidim. So it's a Jewish group, and
thank God.
on Passover is a very difficult time for all of us. We have 612ers. We do. We have a lot of our Hasidic members that we call them pastanisht, which they don't eat pasta on Pesach, and others do rice pasta on Pesach.
I hate to tell you, they make
just don't take it.
Matzah meal. They do it. You can buy it, but they don't. I don't.
No. Not for us, no.
But are you, quote unquote, I mean, joking aside, but let's get back to joking very soon. Are you a, quote unquote, real rabbi? Can you marry people? Or are you already married and happily so?
I want you to know that I've married 2 people, and I wouldn't hire me based on the statistics of the result. I'm still friends with all 4 of them, but I don't know if any of the 4 shall ever meet again.
All right.
But it was a
You're
great chuppah, I'll
responsible.
tell you something.
What, talk? What?
Well, the first time I married someone, at the end I said, Mazel tov on your first marriage. And
Yeah, that did not bode well. That's not probably the best thing to
I
say.
was being honest.
Oh, you knew. Wait, but
I didn't really say that. I didn't really, but I was thinking that. And
Ah. No, but this is interesting because the host of this program, Dave,
oh,
he married a nice woman who converted before, and she was Jewish and he's Jewish. But they went to a rabbi for many months, and one of the things the rabbi said before he would actually deign to conduct the ceremony and do it was to make absolutely sure, first of all, not that she was, but that they were right for each other, that it was going to work out. You were like, give me the money, I'll do the blessing, and you're there, or no?
yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I remember there were three marriages. One of them, he came to me, said, Rabbi, what should I do? I'm getting married. I don't have money. I said, come back when you have money. And
You
then
are
he asked
Jewish.
me what I should do. But
Yes.
I'll tell you the story of my first wedding that I performed. I was about 19 years old. I used to give classes at Rabbi Baumzer's Young Israel of Flatbush, I guess, on Ocean Parkway. And
Ocean Parkway. We love Ocean Parkway.
so my two buddies who used to come to the shiur, there were one's a fellow violinist. They're the Epstein brothers, and I think they had a sister too. All became Chabad Bali Tshuva, and their parents back in Chattanooga, Tennessee, were very pleased and filled with nachat of their children and grandchildren. So they decided they were going, after 40 years, they were going to do a Jewish wedding. And they asked me to come do it. And he called me, wanted to get everything right, Mr. Epstein, Dr. Epstein, from Chattanooga. And I gave him a list of what he needed to bring, which was basically a glass that can break in a double bag. I told him about a ring that has to be his in his possession. He has to buy it physically. The wine has to say mivushal, which he wrote. And I said a ketubah. He also said that he had the Alter Rebbe's nigun written down that he's going to have performed, that his kids gave, the Chabad nigun, and everything was fine. And when we came before the wedding, before the chuppah, it was a small 10 person little marriage. And I asked him for the ketubah, and he said he's coming in a moment up the stairs. And in walked actually a little guy with a gigantic tuba, and he said, "This
Oh no, no,
he plays for
no.
the New York Philharmonic. He's got the notes. We sent him the whole score of the Alter Rebbe's nigun, and we had to find someone else's ksuba. We did a Xerox copy and whited it out and put his tuba in there, and it all worked out because they walked up to the tuba with a big boom, 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 boom. It was really beautiful. They had a tuba and a tuba
And yeah,
and a yain mavushal.
is this a real story?
It's a true story. Yeah, you can actually find the Epstein boys. One works for the Lubavitch Chabad Youth Organization, and
This is
yeah,
to make a ketubah. By the way, we should have explained a ketubah for people. There are actually non-Jews who watch this program. I discourage them from it, but yeah, they tune in. So it is the thing. It is the Jewish marriage contract. It's like you go to New York State for the legal one, and you go to jewelry for the Jewish one. Anyway, let me ask you. Before we've been talking, we're having a great time, but let's talk about Soul Doctor. Now, did you ever
yeah,
meet Reb Shlomo? Shlomo Carlebach.
yeah. I knew Shlomo very well as a child until the age of 6 or 7, very much, and he would do beans in the house, and I have a little kind of qualifier when people ask me this question. I mean, I say, like, I'm in New York, and like anyone who works in the theater district, have you ever met the naked cowboy? Have you ever met, the fellow at the information desk in Grand Central Station? Everyone knew Shlomo Carlebach.
Well,
Everyone.
new and
No,
new.
no. Everyone in the Jewish community knew him and felt he knew him and he knew them, because Shlomo Carlebach would walk down the street. It could take him 2 or 3 hours to walk around the block in Borough Park. He met everyone. He remembered their names. He hugged them. Even if it was a 20-second exchange. Today, as people come, the thousands of people have come to the Broadway show. They come and they say, "Oh, I knew Shlomo. I met him once. He said, 'Holy brother.'" He looked at me, and 20 years later, he said, "Holy brother, how you doing again?" And he remembered me. He was very transformative. He was very there. And today you walk down the street in New York, it's blinding. Humanity is blinding. You can't walk down the street if you start, you become a little Machiavellian, how am I going to get through this crowd? Shlomo Carlebach would walk down the street and see the homeless people. He was like going on a shopping spree. Look, here's a homeless guy, and he would empty his pockets and
But
go out and give his money away.
Well, I don't want to mix up what you actually witnessed because said you were 5 or 6 years old. They were
Yeah,
coming.
but then later I knew him afterwards. But even at 5 or 6, we would walk down the street with him, and he would empty his pockets, give his coat, go around, try to find food. I mean, he knew their names. He played concerts for them. He carried around a little cologne perfume when there was an older or man or woman who hadn't bathed in a long time. He would say, "Look, I bought this for you," and he would spray them and then hug them.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
So I knew him
it
as a
doesn't.
child. He would tell stories in the house until I was 6 or 7, up all night, and I had a great experience with that.
Danny, I lost your image there. I don't know why.
My
Where did
phone.
you go? Now it's just me. Although I hear you, so keep talking. We may have to continue this with everybody looking at just me, which is a horrible
Yeah,
thing.
they were in a minute. It's just my phone recharging for a second. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, get that. How did you direct the movie? With all the it took so much for the tech on this, and we can't get a zoom thing. There we go. Now you're black, which is all right. You're not playing Nina Simone here. You're just invisible for the moment.
I'm recharging my phone. Yeah, it's a
Here we
big thing
go.
to get my image. I want it to be something special.
Oh.
Yeah, the film. It's interesting you talk about the visual. Most people in trailers and they see. Let me see something from the movie, and it's interesting that today's cinema dilemma of the cinema industry, which is a worldwide uh, existential question that especially came to play over COVID. Why do we need movie theaters? Why should people go to the theater? You can see something at home, you could press pause. So they say people like to gather together to hear stories, which is really what this is about. But what most people do not really appreciate, because it's the unseen, is that most of the technology in a movie theater and most of the in a high like an AMC or a Regal or Cinemark, where they put in nationwide like $1 billion to upgrade their theater, most of it goes into the audio, into the sound, to the Dolby. And people don't realize that the experience, I mean, a picture is as sharp as a picture is going to be. Very few people can tell the difference between a 70 millimeter and a 35 millimeter and a Blu-ray. Even professional projectionists will say, if you put them side by side, and yeah, there is a difference, so you experience a difference, you can't see that difference. But I will tell you that when you walk into a movie theater, the first thing they give you, those trailers, Godzilla, boom, boom. You hear such an amazing spectrum and dynamics. So it's symphonic, and they have symphony orchestras playing for you. And people say a movie or a musical. No, every movie is a musical.
Well, it's because people, everybody's got a 40-inch, a 50-inch, or 70-inch TV, and most people don't have the audio quality stuff to go. They don't get the soundbar thing. They don't get the woofers and the tweeters and the hookers. They don't bother with it, so they don't realize is that
the hookers they have, but it's the tweeters that are hard to get.
So
I'd like to say that
yeah.
I recently saw a home theater, like a very basic new home theater, like that's on the level, not exactly of a movie theater. It was at a show and it was like in Philadelphia, and it was a setup that was kind of like you put it in and 2 stands, and it was $78,000 for the basic setup. To create any kind of sound that sounds like a movie theater, you have to design the room. You have to, be in a certain place. It's not, unless you put on special, I will tell you, if you put on special headphones, it's still not surround sound. You're not in the story. And what I did with this movie, because it's a live show, and Soul Doctor's always been played in the round or semi-round. We were in the circle, in the square in Broadway, and it's Shlomo Carlebach always performed from in front of the stage. It took him an hour to get to the stage because he was hugging everyone. It was about the Shlomo Carlebach experience took place not in front of Shlomo's microphone, but in the theater itself. And he would walk in and out of the theater. It was the energy of the room. And it was the being. It was absolutely that. And that's really what Soul Doctor has always been about. Not what's on stage, but what's in the audience. So for recording, how do you recreate a live production? And everyone is always focusing, when they do the live captures, the main focus is absolutely on how you're going to capture the video, the lighting challenges of a blown out theatrical lighting rig, right? And then you have to adapt that for a film. It's a whole other treatment. And I realized that you can't compete with film in terms of a studio film. You can't bring the people into the picture in the way you do in regular film. It's still theater where you're bringing the story into the room. And therefore, what we did, I really invested in uh, uh, an extraordinary recording of the actual performance, that where we mic'd the entire theater and the audience about 78 different points with different omnidirectional and boom mics all around. And that was created by a brilliant, I think he won the Oscar actually, called Ronen Nagal. And he designs soundscape installations at the MoMA and at the new museum and all over the world, at Bilboa. So this was really an art installation of soundscape. And it was about a year and a half of work to create the situation, the environment that when you see Soul Doctor, it was very successful, because like in the real show, in the middle of the movie, during the happy songs, you see the audience getting up in the aisles, dancing in the front of the aisles, wanting to go on stage. And because of that soundscape that was created through this Dolby, these Dolby systems cost about $800,000-900,000 for every little theater.
A pittance.
And
A pittance.
and that's the experience really that Soul Doctor you could only see in the theater. People say, "Are you going to stream it? When are you going to stream it?" Never. This was not made for streaming. You can't really see Soul Doctor.
Never say never. I mean, there's going to be people who want to see this 5 years from now. They can't roll back to June 13th in a time machine and go back and see it. So
true. But we'll have a version. We'll have a version that'll be ready, for that, specially adapted. But it's a different piece.
So, and I do want to say, so this is what you did was in doing Soul Doctor, you kind of did like this mega version of the actual Broadway or wherever it's played, the theater show. It's a movie, but it's a movie of the performance, right? And I want to get that. I wasn't so clear on that. So it's like you're at the show, as opposed to you turn Soul Doctor into a very different entity, into like a movie. Am I right?
Yeah, they call this a live capture, and our partner and exhibitor, Fathom Event, they're the largest distributors in the world, actually. And my phone is back, so you can let me in when you want.
Oh, Mazel. Okay, this is good. All right, hold on. Let's see if we can get Daniel Wise back. Wisely done, almost.
I'd like a vote from your crowd if I have a better voice for radio or a face for radio.
Well, the voice is really, really nice. And what you need is better pictures on the interwebs. Or you need a headshot, because there's no decent picture of you on the web. So you need to get some of those if you're going to be doing more press. I'm still not seeing your face. I
don't know why you're not seeing my face now.
I'm still looking at.
I think I have to press something here.
Wait, hold on. Almost, maybe. No.
There I am. Do you see me?
No, I do not. This is still radio with me. Hold on. I mean, we'll do what we can. All right, Ben. Fine. You're back. Mazel, welcome back. Okay. So, we're talking with Daniel Wise, who is the creator-director of Soul Doctor, which, if you missed it off Broadway, if you missed it on Broadway, you can still see it this coming week, going to a local movie theater near you. It's going to be one within 10, 15 miles of where you live, unless you're in really the boonies somewhere.
Even in the boonies.
Or the Boonewitzes, if they're Jewish boonies. But let me ask you, Daniel Wise, about this. So It's one thing to grow up knowing Reb Shlomo. It's another to say, you know what? I'm going to write a show about him, which must have happened like at least 15, maybe 20 years ago, right? In terms of when the project really started. So what convinced you, A, that you would and could write a show? And then how'd you go about getting it from like a finished manuscript in your computer to on a stage?
You used all the operative words. And so you set up the story. You said the word project, getting it from idea, show to stage, and then to screen. And the operative word is project. I was on my way. I was producing or directing the China production of Rent. We were bringing the first production, Broadway production, with the cast, Broadway cast, to China, to
And by the way,
Wuhan,
over
actually.
there, did they call it Lent? No, that's racist. That's
That
terrible.
was
I'm
funny.
so
That was
sorry.
funny. And then we actually no, they did, and we actually did all our rehearsals and production in Wuhan, and then went all throughout Asia. And I'm on my way. It's a you know, high pressure. I can't be late. And this fellow I meet on the street, who I had seen at the Carlebach Shul the previous Friday night, and he was a newcomer to the neighborhood. He says, "Hey, I want to talk to you. You have 3 minutes, Broadway and 70th Street." I said, you know, I don't have time right now, but I said, okay, to myself, what would Shlomo do? Shlomo never would refuse someone who wants to talk to him, even if he was late to perform at the Metropolitan Opera House, which happened many times. He would come an hour, 2 hours late because people needed to talk to him. And I said, okay, 3 minutes. We ordered um, a tea. We sat down and he said, I heard you're a Broadway Hollywood guy. I have an idea to make a Broadway show about Shlomo Carlebach. So I said, you have an idea or is a project? He said, no, a project. I said, well, the first thing is something has to be written. And he said, I know a script. I said, no, not a script, a check. Because if you want it to be a project, you need to write a check, so there could be a script. He said, how much? I said, if you put $50,000 together, we'll see what kind, if there's a show there, if there's a character who has, dimensions and struggles and challenges, and what there's an arc there, and what the turning points in his life are, and how the music is, what's narrative or a jukebox, what our approach is. We'll hire a lyricist and a director and do a workshop. And he wrote a check on the spot. He said, where do I make it out to? I said, the Shlomo
Cash?
Theater Company.
Oh,
He said, you have a company called the Shlomo Theater Company? I said,
with
write me a
$50,000,
check,
I
I'll
will.
open an account.
Right,
So
yes,
he
there's
did, and we had a workshop. The Folksbina, the National Yiddish Theater,
yes, the
did a
folks who did the
workshop with
Yiddish
us.
Fiddler, yeah.
Yep, the Yiddish fiddler. And Zalman Malotik, who knew Shlomo very well, played with him many times. Zalman wrote, uh, put together, got the organization behind us. It was their first semi-English production. We had a little Yiddish in it, but we played it at the JCC. We had a great cast. The heart of the show has barely changed since then, but it took over an hour to get the audience out after the show. They were singing and dancing and celebrating, and we knew at that moment that this was going to be an audience-driven uh, enterprise, event, like the Shlomo experience. And we were going to follow the audience to wherever the audience was going to take us, which took us to Broadway and all over the world, and now to all the communities in the world. And that really has to do with how it was discovered once we turned it into a film.
Well, let
So
me ask
it's
you,
really
is
the
the
Black
purpose,
audiences that did that. That was really the African American audiences that really turned this into a national event.
well, because did you realize, I mean, halfway through, or at what point did you think, you know what, it's Shlomo's story, but if this is going to go anywhere beyond like a very insular Jewish community, and also the fact that all the critics were pointing out that on some level the core of the show is also his not relationship, his friendship with Nina Simone. Yeah, and you sort of kind of must have realized, oh, when we better kind of focus on that a little more if we want this to keep going this way rather than this way. True.
I it's interesting, again from the audiences, but also again really creating a piece that held together. The more we expanded it, and it became very episodic, and we went through. We've staged maybe a total of 5 or 6 hours if you use all the different directions we went to, and that's why we plan to do a television series. And we have plenty of material there. But really, as we continued, again, listening to the audiences, and the show was really following a very short interview that Shlomo had, that we conducted thousands of pages of transcripts of interviews afterwards over the next years. But it really followed a very simple arc where Shlomo was telling the story of his life and the turning points, and really, the first riddle when you're going to dramatize, and I don't mean that in what some people think that dramatization is a falsification or a fictionization. It's just the opposite. Dramatization means we try to find what the real uh, dimensions of the personalities, his physiology, his psychology, his sociology, where he comes from, what those conflicts are, and how they relate to someone from a different world. So this is a very three-dimensional, six-dimensional, 360 study of characters of the worlds they come from. That's what drama is. Otherwise, it's not dramatic. The great riddle that we have of Shlomo Carlebach's life, he was a classical Talmudist. He was a classical violinist as a child till he was from Vienna. They were serious violin students. Nobody knows about that. Most people don't know that. He was
I thought you just fiddled around, but that's just with young girls. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
that was after the bar mitzvah. That was after the bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
The
Well,
the course of his life, and the when you're writing a drama, the formulaic like principle, they always say, oh, you need the I want, what's his aspiration, and what's the challenge, and come up with a little somewhere over the rainbow, and there you got a show. He was on a completely different trajectory, very seriously. He was a classicist. He was someone who was living a monastic yeshiva life where he studied Talmud from morning until night. He never read a newspaper, never spoke to a woman, had no interaction with the world whatsoever. I mean, this is his life until he was in his late 20s. He started really reaching out into the world when he became the right hand man, and I hear this really from those who were there at the time. He was the Lubavitcher Rebbe's closest emissary, and he and Zalman Schachter were the first emissaries of the Chabad movement to the college campuses. And
right. Okay.
Shlomo felt that if he was going to ask them to separate from the boys and the girls to the right and left of the room, there was no one left except for the next speaker. So he said after a while, he was looking. He became a rabbi here and there. He was a rabbi up in New Jersey somewhere in the Hicks, and he was looking for some way, like as in Sister Act, the beginning of Sister Act. He felt that the Jewish expression, the Jewish experience, the Jewish culture, the worship, the connection to who they were, their identity, was bankrupt. It was an imitation, vicarious kind of clinging to a different world and a different time, and it wasn't integrated into the time. And all the culture from Europe was very, very much part of Europe. People can say it was, yes, it was part of a certain level of you know uh, enclave culture, but they were there, they lived there, they exchanged music and ideas and languages and so many cultures and tastes and sounds, um, and they were ghettoizing themselves culturally in America. And Shlomo wandered into he would have gotten fired if the people saw him walk into a bar, but he walked into the bar, the Midtown Bar and Grill in Atlantic City, 15 minutes from where he was a rabbi, and he ran into someone who also was a classicist, someone who, from the age of 4 until she was an adult, spent 6, 7, 8 hours a day practicing the piano, classical piano, until she became a great pianist. And it's a similar discipline, I could say, as a violinist, a similar discipline to Talmudic discipline. It's a classical discipline with tremendous, tremendous amount of hours and hours of focusing on minutia, a small phrase, and splitting it apart and putting it together.
Well,
And
that's Talmudic.
it's Talmudic, and memorizing, thousands of pages of notes and not having one wrong. And she was the daughter of clergy, and she sang in church. And she went out and broke from that tradition. And her mother was not to know that she played the devil's music in a bar, so she changed her name from Eunice Wayman to Nina Simone. And she wasn't a singer. She wanted to get into Curtis Conservatory, but this fellow at the bar who owned the bar said, "Look, if you want a job here, it's good pay. Just have to sing something." She sang "Spell on You." She said, "I can't sing." And they met very shortly afterwards. She encouraged him to write music. She said, "If you want to wake people up, got to write music. And if you want to know how to pray like a Jew, come to the church. Come to my church. I'll show you how to pray, how to revive, how to come back to life." And she took him to Father Divine in Philadelphia. She helped him. Yes, there was someone who taught him guitar and someone who helped him here and there, but he really learned from her to write music and to create this Hasidic, the rich Hasidic vitality of the Hasidic music and the Hasidic practice was interpreted and adapted and influenced by his creation of what they called at that time Jewish soul music, but it really was a Hasidic gospel that Shlomo, till today, when you go into a Shlomo, any synagogue or wedding, as soon as they start singing the Shlomo music, everyone starts jumping around like the James Brown scene in
Oh,
in,
I
in
know
Blues
which movie.
Brothers.
Blues Brothers, yeah. So let me ask you, in terms of family, you've got some people on board on this. So you got Nina Simone's daughter is supporting the film and helping the film and doing all this, and have the Carlebach kids. He has two daughters, I think. They've been supportive too, and they've been on board with the whole project. Are they helping? Are they? Where is everybody? All three of those people at?
Well, right, I could say right now the Lisa Simone, and she spoke about this yesterday on television actually the other day. I knew Lisa Simone was the original character in the original cast of Rent, even in the workshop. And Rent is a very small, tight family, and therefore we had a lot of friends in common. I kind of knew her, but she was living in Miami, and we were playing in Miami prior to Broadway, and her bass player in her band was our bass player. And I get a call from the press agent saying Lisa Simone is coming with her 8 agents and lawyers and who knows what's. She doesn't want any publicity. I said, "Oh my God, I'm going to get shut down." We were just, the story was starting to really focus on this. And I said, maybe we should change the name. It'll just be kind of a metaphor. He met someone in a bar, who cares who? And, I never went at that time to try to really clear this. We were developing something. I wasn't going to start licensing things. We were
Oh my God! So you were
on the
actually
fly.
performing these. You could have been. You literally could have.
I thought she was coming to serve us
Oh.
a shutdown restraining order or something. And they certainly looked like it when I walked in. They were kind of very skeptical, and they wanted to actually see what this is. There were a lot of unlicensed projects and things going on at the time, and that they were not happy about. And I, I decided to go back to my hotel, put my pillow over my head, and just wait to get served. And I got a call afterwards. I go to the theater, and on stage, Lisa's there hugging Erica Ash, who was played Nina. And she came over to me and gave me a hug, and she said, "We came here kind of with our guns, guns blazing. We really were skeptical. We wanted to see what this was." And she said that 2 minutes into that scene where Shlomo and Nina met, I started to cry uncontrollably, she said, because, you're the first person who wrote about my mother, who understood what her life was about. And because, it took me a while to realize that the Shlomo Carlebach is a rare piece of theatrical construct that is based on not uh, pathos, but ethos. It's an ethos story. It's about two people who really wanted to change the world. It's a hard story to write about. It really is. There's very few. I mean, Othello is ethos. There is ethos in a lot of Shakespearean themes, particularly in some Greek drama. It's a harder study to relate as a theatrical, to follow that drama. The stakes are not so universally, simplified and identified with, and you've got to really bring it home. So that's how, in continuing to write, when she gave me that kind of encouragement, I felt much more liberty to really explore not just the relationship, the friendship, but the backgrounds and how that cosmic collision, you know, really created, formed, some other kind of gravitational
Well, let
universe.
me ask you also, though. You were hoping and fingers crossed, and it worked out great with Nina Simone's daughter. Did you need Neshama and the other Carlebach kids? Uh, you didn't really need their permission to write about him. He's a public figure. But did you approach them before you started doing all this, or were you kind of waiting for their shoe to drop and you were just doing it
Oh,
anyway?
no, that we were, and Nadara is actually here, and she's very much part of from the very beginning, the family, and in every way, we were very, very committed to, and we're constantly involved with every voice that we could hear and incorporate and include, and of course, you know, this is Shlomo Carlebach, and during his lifetime, I think people considered him a national treasure, therefore public property, and we were very careful that it did affect him. He wasn't able to really reap the financial benefit to create stability for his family, and we really, this was important for us to do everything in the most kosher way, because we
Yeah.
were responsible to higher authority.
By the way, if you want to support all these people, just go to the movie. The movie is Soul Doctor. It's happening this Tuesday, 7 o'clock in most places in the evening, June 13th, at a theater near you. Go to Fathom Events and just put in your zip code or put in the town that you live in, and it'll give you the nearest movie theater where you can go see in 70 speaker surround sound with like jumbo elephants and streamers coming. God himself, God is actually going to be at the screen. He's God. He can be in all of them. So a little piece of God is going to be looking down, and go, "Oh, this is a good show. I'm going to watch it."
He was the only one we could cast that could actually be in 600 places at the same time.
There you go. Now, is the purpose you've done this for? Are you hoping now to get the show back up across America, like to do a equity tour, non-equity tour, getting up in colleges? What is your next focus with this material?
Right now, it was really important that there be, this phenomenon. I look at the theaters, and I see that this little story is playing in small towns in Bethel, Alaska, where there's no roads to get there. You need a ski plane, and a little 35-seat theater with recliner chairs, and in every island, 4 islands in Hawaii, in Kona, and Honolulu, and Oahu, and in the Grand Forks, North Dakota, and little places here and there.
So it's
And
licensed. It's playing in a lot of different places
no,
already.
this is Fathom is bringing it everywhere.
Oh, I'm you're talking about
The
the movie. I'm
movie.
sorry. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that right now I'm going to continue with this attitude of let the audience say what they want, and usually after a movie, I think after this awareness, there will be tours, and right now I've heard people saying they want to bring it back to Broadway next year, and so this is not exclusive of the live production. But I think that usually, and this is a phenomenon with the Metropolitan Opera as well, that the Fathom events is counterintuitive a little bit, but when you
Well,
see so live, you want to see it live.
the old thinking is very different. People were worried. Oh my God, if they put Hamilton on Disney, oh yeah, there you go again. If they put Hamilton on Disney, it's going to go to Hamilton in the theater. They did it with Legally Blonde. It ran for a long time. Chicago, of course, the ultimate deal breaker. Chicago, Oscar-winning movie. Who's going to go to the Broadway to see it? They can see the movie. No, no. There's something different. There's something special about to say. So, are you working on any other shows, any other projects, or is your whole life just Shlomo centric right now? Or not, but in 6 months, let's say.
Oh, well, in terms of this particular piece, so Lisa Simone, who's come on as, she's an Academy Award nominated a producer. She produced What Happened, Miss Simone, which is the most viewed documentary ever on Netflix. I think they've had 80 or 100 million views, and she's now working to create a television series that really focuses on all these intersecting lives. These were citizens who changed the world, and they all knew each other. We were friends, and they disagreed and agreed and related to each other. Nina Simone, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rabbi Heschel, Shlomo Carlebach's father, Shlomo Carlebach, and many, many, many others who
Is
all
Arnold
were.
Stang in there? I'm kind of hoping Arnold Stang is in there somewhere.
Well, you're gonna if you come in and write an Arnold Stang episode,
I'm in.
sit at,
Count me in.
we'll sit
Oh,
at the writers' table. Seriously, it's incredible how these people were really on a, you know, it wasn't an official revolution. It wasn't Che and Castro in the woods with guns, but they had their guitars instead of guns, and they really were part of this revolution. They were guerrillas with their little factions all over trying to shake up the establishment. They were all
and the world is so much
purpose.
better because of it.
It's so much better because of it to me and to you. But then again, a lot of people may look at me and you, especially you, and say, "Oi, oi, vey."
Everybody looks at me and go, oi. Speaking of oi, we have to have the elephant in the room. I made a joke about it before, but it's not really a joke. I mean, how do you counter? Every time you do a press thing or wherever the movie goes, there's going to be that thing of, what about the Lilith article about Reb Shlomo? What about the allegations? Not that he's a Jeffrey Epstein, not even that he's a Harvey Weinstein, but that he was inappropriate in certain ways with young women who were not of an appropriate age. Go.
Well, that I haven't been able to find, and I've done real research. I haven't been able to see anything specific or have anyone tell me anything about something about inappropriate with women their age. I mean, sometimes there are articles. I mean, there was one mention, I think, of that Lilith article where a rabbi who never met Shlomo, and he was quoted in this Lilith article. Lilith, by the way, is a mythological character who was supposed to be the first evil wife of Shlomo, of Adam, or
She's
something
not mythological. She was on Cheers. Or no, it was
on
Frasier.
Cheers. Well, that's so funny. You're great.
Thank you.
But there was, and I'll quote this. I mean, Shlomo, by the way, would if people knew him, he had an address book with thousands of pages, and many of them. And whenever he saw a phone booth, he would start calling people. He cared about people. He met men, women, children. He would call them in the middle of the night, and he would tell them, "You're the highest of the high, most beautiful, greatest, etc." And this was his way. And there's a rabbi, a young rabbi, who was quoted, and this is continuing to be quoted throughout the press when they quote something, an article from about 15 years ago. This rabbi estimated that Shlomo Carlebach had sex 78,444 times, because he said at least 3 times a day. Now, I have not been able to find anyone who really knew him and people who hung out with and dated him, that he actually was someone who fooled around, or he was someone who hugged and kissed and was very loving, and whether he had relationships or not, I was told by people who really knew him, he had long-term relationships. My mother, who dated him for 4 years on and off, and who hated him till this day, we were not allowed to sing his songs.
Whoa, there's a story. How did you not drop that in until
My mother guilt tripped me for the first 5 years of the show, that I could write a show about such a man and such a schmutz.
Why did she hate him so? He was. Why else?
And so
she came
to the show. Well, she came to the show and she said, you really talked about his life, and I understand who he was and the whole context of things. And I asked her, listen, you knew him, and you knew him well for years, and you were all over with him. What about these stories about predatorial, She looked at me like this, and this is my mother, who's never let go of an ounce of pain. I say this with love. I love her. She calls me 23 times a day. But if someone, no, even till this day, my father died last year. She'll still give me about what he was, and he was a nice guy. So I'm giving that as a context. We could talk about. I love my mother, and but she doesn't mince her words when she has a certain feeling about someone. She looked at me predatorial. Never. Shlomo was a puppy boy. He would never hurt somebody if he was aware of that. He was in any way doing something that made someone feel uncomfortable. Never, ever, ever. And so many people say this. And when I have interviewed people, they've just said to me over and over again, yeah.
Oh no! Wait. Hashem has stopped your microphone. You are suddenly mute. I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. You have suddenly gone mutastic here. Oh my gosh. Danny, can you say something? No. You're like Moses now before Pharaoh, before Aaron told him, hey, look, you can talk. You're not stuttering there. Oh my God. Uh-oh. You need Fathom events to help with our Zoom thing here. How we doing? Hello? Oy. No. Oy, no. And we can't really, we kind of have to put this because we're coming up on time anyway. But, we've been chatting. Oh, he's connecting. Hello? Oh, you got to unmute. Let's see if you can unmute yourself. Let's see. Unmute. Hit your unmute button. Shalom, Danny.
Here I am.
Welcome back, Mazel Miklik. So please finish up that because that's getting really fast. I want to know what your mother then had against. So if it wasn't that, what's her grudge?
Well, this is something interesting to know, and I remember as a young child, we were from the early Baalei Tshuva, from the few Baalei Tshuva in 1970 in Borough Park, and she joined a seminary for women. She was in her 30s, late 30s, early 30s. And the rabbi said, let me explain to you what Shlomo Carlebach is. I had actually, in the original production, had a scene like this in a character. You have a duck. A duck was born, never seen water in its life, walking around the forest looking for water, comes upon a puddle of mud, jumps into the mud, starts singing, dancing. I found water, and it's full of mud. It's just mud. Bug continues to walk. Some other bigger duck finds him and pulls him out of the mud, takes him to a beautiful lake. Oh, he's in the beautiful water. Now he knows what water is. Shlomo Carlebach, he said, and these rabbis would say, was like the puddle of mud. There may be some water inside, but it's mud. Schmutz. You don't have a mechitza. There's all sorts of people who, you don't have to learn Shulchan Aruch in order to walk in the door. If you don't wear a yarmulke, you still get a hug. And it was really, there were no borders, there were no boundaries. And it was at a time really where Judaism and Orthodox Judaism was really fortifying itself. And it was very, very suspect. Even Hasidim amongst their groups, who was less stringent, who was not stringent, they were very, very concerned with the fortification and the segregation and the insulation of Jewish practice from the world and from colleges and from all the rock and roll generation. And, Shlomo Carlebach brought in the black
Your mom was worried about this. So she was worried that not your father, that Shlomo was too much like letting the bad influence in, the Goyish influence in, when she was more conservative in terms. Is that?
I think it's more of the kind of questions you get today, like how could you even tell someone's story or sing someone's songs if he would do such a thing? I mean, it's there must be something subversive and unhealthy about it, or spiritually tainted, And this was the attitude people had. Like now the truth is, I've never heard anything about Shlomo Carlebach personally, as someone who's worked in the rock and roll business all over the world. Anything that I've heard, even close to any of the artists that I've personally worked with, or John F. Kennedy or Frank Sinatra or any other rock star, certainly in the 60s,
Yeah,
And there was
but that's why I'm asking. I'm saying, you
I
make
haven't
it
heard
clear.
anything, but I do think it's important that if someone brings this up, it's so important for a journalist. This is a 20-year-old article. I'd like to find out why the New York Times, in an article that they interviewed me before the Broadway show, and I said, as far as I know, Shlomo was a puppy, not a predator. And
Right.
I
But
don't think
all I was trying to ask is,
why hasn't anyone done a proper investigative journalism, a work of proper investigative journalism, rather than a popular somehow destruction of Shlomo, someone who died many, many years ago, but also the idea of creating a taboo of his place or his contribution and what you could say his children in this world. And I think that if you can't bring a person to trial, I think someone should do a thorough investigation. This show is not a celebration of Shlomo Carlebach. It's a celebration of what Shlomo Carlebach and Nina Simone means to our generation. It really is a story about the revival of the Jewish spirit and experience in the aftermath of the Holocaust, and what was discovered from the film and the Black audiences is this is the first story that is out there which is about Black empowerment. This is not about what the Jews did for the Black people. And you hear this sometimes, not from Jews who were involved with the civil rights movement, but Jews who are not involved, and they see that there's some incidents or hate speech from a Black person, and they say, after what we did for them. And
I
I'll
say
tell
that.
you,
Even I say that, yes, all the
say
time.
that.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I spoke to Susanna Heschel. She called me. I was so fortunate. And we marched together in Selma, Alabama last year with the Torah and the King family. And she said to me, she hates when people say that because we didn't do anything for them. This is a friendship. We did for each other. We were friends and we were allies. And this is a story of how the Jewish culture till today and Jewish practice, it's the only unifying force of Jewish of the Jewish uh, revival and Jewish expression that people from every denomination of Judaism can pray together or pray separately with this same experience. And it is very much influenced and helped shape by this turning point of his life, by Nina Simone specifically, that relationship. And Shlomo, I met him the 2 days before he passed away. We had a long conversation, and he said to me again, if you want to learn how to pray like a Jew, go to a Black church. Brother, there isn't a Black church in this city I haven't been to. He would go to a Black church every time he went to a city that had a Black church on a Sunday morning. He'd disappear, go to the church, and come back.
Oh, I go for the waffles, quite honestly. But we've been talking with Daniel Wise here in the neighborhood. So let me tell you one more time, but I have one last question to ask him. But go see Soul Doctor this Tuesday evening at a theater, truly a theater quite near you. So you're going to be either going to pick a state, pick a city, pick a, as he said, a little bitty tiny burg in Alaska. There will be a place that you can go to fairly easily to see and hear in quadra-stereophonic supersonic sound Soul Doctor, the musical movie event that is happening. Go to Fathom Events and look up, put in your zip code, and you can find where to see Soul Doctor. So my last question for you, Daniel, is do you have a favorite Shlomo Carlebach song? Did you hear the question? Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. I have to say that his song Mizmor LeDavid, which has different words. If there is one song that I feel like is his Mozart, it has that angelic quality that for me, it's my personal taste. Is Mizmor LeDavid. Let's go.
You can do a little bit more, and then we'll cut you off there.
Alme menuchos yenaleini. Nafshi yishovet. Yancheini b'magli tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki ele b'geiz hamovet. Lo yirara ki ata imadi shivtecha. I want everyone to sing along with me and keep singing.
I'm doing like the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to do at the Fabrengens, where he's pounding on the table when they're singing. That's going to be on Taylor Swift's next album. I don't know if you knew this. But Daniel Wise, it has been absolutely delightful. Thank you for your openness, your honesty, your Jewishness. I wish you much luck with the continued success and long life to Soul Doctor and to you, and shalom to you.
Shalom, blessing, my dear brother. And thank you for the joy. Keep spreading that smile. My God, you have a magic. You have your smile is a soul doctor.
Yes, thank you.
Really, you have a healing smile. You should sell it. You shouldn't give it for free. You should take insurance. You should take insurance for it.
Give me $5, I'll smile again. Until then, I won't. No, I'm kidding. Thank you.
Shabbos, brother.
Good Shabbos to you, and shalom.